What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today, I wanted to talk about the Detroit Pistons and their offseason plans. We're still going through every single team in the NBA. This is the second episode of the offseason preview series. Still out of town, so like I said in the video about the Raptors the other day, all this information is accurate as of the day I'm recording this. I'm recording this on June 9th, so all this is accurate as of now. Things change quickly in the NBA, so some of this might not be accurate by the time you see this, but I'm hoping that most of this is still relevant to you. So let's go over the Detroit Pistons, their offseason plans, their draft, selection, and what's going to be happening for them. So the Pistons obviously were one of the worst teams in the league last year. They had the second worst record, which gives them the second best lottery odds, but they were not very good, obviously. I mean, it was a lot of Jeremy Grant and not much else, really. He signed there in the offseason for a lot of money and wanted to be the lead option on the team and wanted to, prove what he can do as the lead ball handler and lead scorer and everything. And he proved that. He raised his value across the league, has really cemented himself as a guy who, can be really, really good on a team like this. I have my doubts on, if he can produce at this same level if he was on a contender, because we just saw him on a contender on the Nuggets last year, and he was good, but obviously he wasn't scoring like 20 points a game and stuff like that. So the Pistons are a pretty barren roster right now. They obviously got rid of Blake Griffin and got rid of Andre Drummond and a lot of their other guys that made them like an okay team a couple of years ago, and now it's just a lot of Jeremy Grant and a bunch of young dudes. So this is a full-on rebuild for sure, and it might take them a while to get back into the playoffs, but they're on a pretty good path because they do have a little bit of young talent on this team, plus a good chance at somebody else this year. All right, so let's go on over and take a look at the cap sheet. They have, not very many free agents this offseason, honestly. A lot of the guys on this team are still on rookie deals or have a couple of seasons left on their contract, so not too much to worry about in terms of retaining players, but let's just go over who they have here. Corey Joseph is on a non-guaranteed deal. They traded for him at the deadline this season. I would not be surprised if he ends up getting cut or bought out and, ends up going on and moving on to a contender, maybe signing a minimum deal with some team that needs a point guard, or even just going overseas and playing somewhere else, because I just don't see him really sticking on this team. Doesn't really make sense for them to keep him around, considering he doesn't fit the timeline at all, and then you would rather just give those minutes to Killian Hayes or whoever else, right? So Corey Joseph being non-guaranteed, I would not expect him to be back next year. I guess there is still a chance, or maybe he gets thrown into a trade or something, but would not anticipate him coming back to Detroit. Dennis Smith Jr. is going to be a free agent. I believe he is restricted, and that's an interesting one because they traded for him from the Knicks this season. He was part of that Derrick Rose deal, and he was okay. He got a little bit of chance to play for them. His career is on life support at this point after this is his third team now. Looks pretty promising when he was on the Mavericks, but did not play well at all when he was with the New York Knicks. And then he was like I said, he was okay with Detroit. So maybe they bring him back, maybe they don't. We'll just have to see how much they value him. I would not anticipate it to be any significant payday if they do end up paying him at all. Or maybe he goes on to another team and see if he can try to resuscitate his career a little bit. Let's skip on down here and look at Wayne Ellington, who will be a free agent. Honestly, not really sure why they signed him in the first place. This is his second stint with the team. He was with them just a couple of years ago and played this year for the Pistons. I mean, maybe they had the idea to trade him at the deadline and nothing materialized. He's okay. He's a solid shooter. Could be a nice 9th or 10th option off the bench for an okay team. But I just don't know why he was even on this Pistons team this year to begin with. So if they bring him back, cool, but I wouldn't anticipate them to, just because it makes no sense. I'd rather see him on a team that actually, could use minutes from a veteran, because this team does not. Hami Diallo is another guy who's interesting here. He will be a restricted free agent this summer. They traded for him from OKC, part of a Steve Mikhailuk, swap there. And he's all right. He showed some promise here with Detroit, and I would anticipate they would bring him back. I mean, they traded for him probably with the intent to re-sign him this summer, so he'll be restricted. Who knows exactly how much money he'll get on his next deal? Should be a nice payday for him. Maybe 8, 9, 10 million per season. We'll see how it goes. But he's a young player, athletic with some potential. I believe he won the dunk contest a couple of years ago, so that's really been the highlight of his career so far. But we'll see how he goes, and I would anticipate him to be back with the team. Then you have a couple of guys down there on these two-way deals, Saban Lee, Frank Jackson. Frank Jackson actually played a little bit for them this year. Saban Lee, I believe, was a second-round pick for the team. I could see both of those guys, getting call-ups to the full roster, getting full deals with the team, because Frank Jackson, he really got into the rotation over the last couple of months of their season, and he started to play well, I thought. And Saban Lee is a younger guy with some potential, so either of those guys could end up on the full roster, I think. But other than that, there's really not very many free agents for this team. Like I said, a lot of the guys on this roster are younger. So if we look up at who they have here, right, like Josh Jackson, Sekou Doumbouya, Isaiah Stewart, Sadiq Bey, that whole block of guys, all those guys I would anticipate to stick around, unless they get thrown into a trade, but really the team's not going to be trading for a star. So pretty much all those guys I think would be back next year. Rodney Magruder could be a guy that gets thrown into a trade somewhere. Maybe Mason Plumlee also, you can maybe trade him at the deadline or something like that to a team. The Magruder would probably just be thrown in for salary matching purposes. Jahlil Okafor could potentially be traded. I could see that. Maybe Jeremy Grant gets a trade offer this offseason that's too good to pass up, because, a contender's going to want to get him. And if they get, if the Pistons can get a first round pick or two out of him, I think they should pull the trigger. So we'll see. I think really the only guys that have stuck on this roster at this point is really their young draft class here, with Sekou Doumbouya, Isaiah Stewart, Sadiq Bey, Killian Hayes, maybe Josh Jackson, but pretty much everybody else is tradable. So in terms of needs for them, everything, there's nobody on this roster that you need to, not draft this position because you already have this player. Like I said, Jeremy Grant has been the focal point of the team this season, but he is not going to be in their long-term plans. By the time this team is back to being a playoff threat or even a title contender, as I'm sure they're hoping to be, Jeremy Grant, he will be in his 30s, mid-30s. It's going to be a long road back for the Pistons, in my opinion at least. So, Jeremy Grant is not going to preclude you from drafting a small forward or a power forward. Even Killian Hayes, who plays the guard spot, you could have another guard next to him. Killian Hayes is kind of switchable. He can play one or two. He's a good enough defender. So, you could draft another point guard. It doesn't really matter. There's nobody on this team that you're like, wow, I can't draft another small forward because we have Jeremy Grant. So, draft best player available, and they have actually pretty good draft odds. They have the second worst record in the league, which gives them, I believe, it's a 52% chance to land in the top 4. So not, great, but it's over 50-50 to get in the top 4 pick. The most likely outcome for them is number 5, at around 27-28%. They could potentially fall as low as 6. I believe 6 is the lowest they could go. So their pick will be somewhere between 1 and 6. They will keep it. It was involved in a weird trade swap with the Rockets and the Thunder, but it is lottery protected, I believe. So they will guaranteed keep their draft pick. So they'll have a top 6 pick this year, and just draft the best player available. You got a shot at Cade Cunningham, shot at Evan Mobley. If not, Jalen Suggs, Kuminga, Jalen Green, any of those guys. Whoever suits your fancy, whoever you feel like is the best player, just go ahead and pick them. So they also have money in free agency. They're going to have a little bit cap space here. Last offseason, they used it on, guys like Mason Plumlee and Jahlil Okafor and obviously Jeremy Grant as well. And those are still guys that they could trade down the line. So we'll see if they can end up getting any value out of that. So maybe, looking around in free agency and signing a couple of players to potentially flip them, whether that's at the deadline or next offseason, and try to get some value out of your cap space that way. Whether that's in the form of draft picks or younger players or whoever. Also taking on bad contracts and deals along with draft picks. If a team is looking to shed salary and they'll give you a first round pick, second round pick, a couple first if it's a really bad contract, and trying to take that on, absorbing that into your cap space in order to get those draft assets. That's definitely something I would look into if I was the Pistons. It's easier said than done, but we've seen teams do that in the past to some degrees of success. So that would be an avenue I'd expect them to explore, because they're going to have the cap space this summer. So we'll see what they do to play with it, but potentially just signing guys in free agency and trading them later, or just trading for guys who are on bad contracts and taking on draft picks as well. But yeah, next season for the Pistons is going to be very similar to this year. It's going to be another year of rebuilding. They're going to have to go through this, probably, next season at least, and maybe another year after that, before they can even really think about trying to get back into the playoffs. It's just, the roster is pretty bare right now. All the players they have are young. The young core is actually not too bad. I really like Sadiq Bey. Killian Hayes obviously still has a lot of potential, but he was injured a lot this season and didn't get to show much of it. Isaiah Stewart had a really good rookie season, and like I said, they're going to have a top 6 draft draft pick this year. So they get to add another young guy to their core, and I think their young core is pretty good overall. You know, like I said, Bay and Isaiah Stewart and Killian Hayes, those three, it's pretty solid. And so you add somebody else to that, you could be looking at an okay team in a couple of years if one of those guys pops and turns into a star. So we'll see. But I do think that this team, you know, is pretty far away from any sort of contention, any sort of playoff contention. So it's going to be at least, you know, probably 2 more seasons before they can really get back. So this year's just going to be about accumulating as many assets as possible, getting those young guys in, getting them minutes, and building for the future. But yeah, that's all I have on the Detroit Pistons and their offseason plans. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to. Leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about the Pistons. What are they going to do this offseason? Who would you like to see them draft? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But yeah, with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.